nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Preble Town Board meeting of September 10th, 2018. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes of August 13th?
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Jane?
Dog control, 2 dogs running at large, 1 returned to its owner and 1 was unwanted. Justice report, $11,815 submitted to the town. And I need a resolution to send to the state that the town justice has been looked at by the board.
Well, I'm not sure that audit is the right word for us. We're looking at it, but we're not auditing it.
Well, it was audited in December.
It was, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but that's the wording in the resolution that we have to do. Right.
To accept the audit then, or read the audit?
This is audited once a year. Well, if it's audited once a year, then I think we can be pretty confident that it is what it is.
Well, I'm sure it's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So we need a resolution, the Preble Town Board, that we have viewed the audited justice court records and found them to be in order.
I'll make a motion to accept them.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Highway report. Jeff has his highway report here. And Jeff is not in town today, so we don't have his commentary. But there are some question marks he has here about county plowing contract. Don, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I got a call from Al Riccatelli, who's an engineer in the highway department. And that would be, I think it was 2 weeks ago, either today or tomorrow, and looking for the contract. And I said, well, we've sent it over twice, but the second time was to the head of the highway department, who since departed. So we sent it again to him, and we sent it to Karen Howe, who's the county attorney. I've been gone last week. I've been caught up on all my emails, so I can't state with absolute certainty that they've not gotten back to me. But to my knowledge, I've not gotten a response from the county. I explained to him briefly. I said, look, what we did was we took the old contract. The new one seemed to have a lot of extra stuff on it that we thought was superfluous. So we took the contract from 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever it was. We updated it, plugged in the new numbers and the new dates, and that's what we're sending out. We're just saying, look, it worked before. You know, let's not break something that doesn't need, or fix something that doesn't need to be, isn't broken. So I don't think I have.
Okay.
I think they're looking for Karen Howe to review it. I don't know who it was that kind of got busy on the original draft. Didn't get into it with them, but they are looking. I mean, they're looking for it, so that's a good thing. There's a couple other towns, one of which I'm involved with, that has the same type agreement. And so I told them, I'm involved with at least Tyler. I think think there might be one other. So I'm hoping they get back to us, and there may be a few things in there that will be okay, but I made the point to him, as Jeff and I have talked, look, this isn't, when you're dealing with a for-profit vendor or provider, they've got to have a lot of this stuff. Question is, do they really need all this stuff when they're dealing with another municipality, just like you are? And of course, one of the biggest things was, if you remember, either side had an out. I think it was on, you had to provide it by such and such a date each year, but you could give notice so that you wouldn't have to go the full 3 years of the contract if it wasn't working. So that was, I think, the most substantive. That, and what they had drafted and presented to us, was not in that. And that was in our original agreement. So.
All right, so we should get
hear
some response by next month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
The other question mark Jeff had was paving the parking lot at the town hall. And did he get together with you about going out for bid, Don? Did you and Jeff get together at one time? Like,
On this?
No,
Dave.
No.
Dave. Oh,
Yeah, I was
Dave.
I
gonna
met
say-
with him out here.
Oh, okay.
He's was working on it, and he said he's talking to Homer has a paver.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking to them, see what kind of screed guy they got.
Okay.
Maybe you can get them to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
You don't have any hard numbers
No.
yet. Okay. So we'll have to. This probably won't be an issue until next year, from what I'm saying. But we can get preliminary numbers for next spring and go from there.
Make it easy budget time.
Yeah, we could work it into the budget for this fall. Okay, highway recreation. Renee is not here tonight. County legislature. Don Boyd called me and he said he won't be coming in tonight. He doesn't really have anything new to present. Jane?
Zoning and code, one building permit issued, 97 miles traveled for the town, 14 building inspections, 58 hours worked, 2 fire inspections, 6 complaint follow-ups, and 56 telephone inquiries, 41 referring to the Nazi flag.
Okay.
Planning board meeting is September 26th at 7 o'clock. ZBA meeting October 4th at 7:30.
Thanks, Jane. Our historian is not in tonight.
Yeah. We collected fees of $244, dispersed $216 to the town of Preble, and $28 to the New York State Aga markets.
Under unfinished business, we have the Ed Benedy situation. Don, can you comment on that?
We sued brought the action a couple of months ago. By law, defendants have a certain amount of time to legally appear in a legal proceeding. If you're personally served within the state, it's generally 20 days. When you're served by substituted service, it's 30 days. But it's 30 days from when service is completed. So one of them was served by what's called substituted service. I think the fellow that lives down here, his wife was served. But then you have to file the papers, and then it's complete 10 days after. Then you add the 30 days to it. Long story short, they are the legal time for either defendant has expired. And we submitted the application, I'd say 2.5 weeks ago, for an order of default, on default. In other words, they haven't appeared. We're asking the court to grant us our relief.
Mm-hmm.
That is, fortunately or unfortunately, it's been assigned to a judge out of Binghamton, because our sitting judge here, Judge Rumsey, was appointed to the appellate division. I'm sure it's been over a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have a sitting Supreme Court judge that normally would take most of the cases. Now, Julie Campbell, who's a county surrogate and family court judge, is acting as a Supreme Court judge on certain cases, mostly I think matrimonials, divorces. Most of the other cases are assigned to judges who are sitting in other counties. So the judge that our case has been assigned to sits in Binghamton.
Mhm.
So the Mountain doesn't come to Cortland. Cortland goes to the Mountain. We have an appearance, which I think I mentioned to you,
Mhm.
is this Friday at 9:30.
Okay.
And even though we didn't have to give formal legal notice to the defendants of the application, we did so because I want to make sure, they've had,
Amplify.
and ample notice. So we did reserve them with a copy of this application. Hopefully it'll go smoothly. Smoothly would mean that the judge will grant us a permanent injunction, permanently enjoining the two defendants from placing, maintaining, keeping this junk debris material on the property. And what that does is, if we obtain it, it now is a court order that directs them basically to keep it clean. And if they don't, then our next step would be to apply for an order of contempt. They are in violation of a court order, therefore they are subject to contempt. And that can lead to, the consequence of incarceration, potentially. That's extreme. Most judges, as we've talked about, are reluctant to do so. But that's how those are the steps. Whether the two defendants show up on Friday or not, I don't know. In a way, I hope that they do, because it might give the judge the opportunity, hopefully he'll grant us our relief and he'll tell these guys that, look, this is what this sets you up for, get it taken care of, and so we don't have to come back to court. Whether it plays out that way or not, I don't know. It's scheduled for 9:30. It's shouldn't be there an hour. It's down in the Broome County Supreme Court. So
you'll show up at that, right?
yes.
Okay.
What's the rough timeline then? You get the order on Friday, so much time passes, and then we file for contempt. Is that like 60 days?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that might be a question I'd ask the judge, what the judge would be inclined to consider. Because we'll need to serve the orders on these guys and give them a certain amount of time to comply.
Right.
So that's a good question. I would say the 60-day time period would probably be a minimum. We're going to start running up in the snow, right? So that you'll have that excuse. So I would think certainly 30 to 45 days anyway.
Right. Yeah. So the odds of us getting a contempt hearing are probably not till next February, March, whatever.
Well,
I mean, by the time we file for it and then they get notified and so on and so forth.
I mean, we certainly,
we don't know for that.
Yeah, it's the middle of September, October, November. You could take a shot this fall. I mean, hopefully we don't get heavy snow till after December.
No, but I mean, actually getting the hearing on the contempt.
Possibly,
Yeah.
But
Okay.
different. It's it's interesting. The law is the same throughout the state, or at least by department, if you will. But how the law is applied is very much a function of the judge's approach. And I don't know this. The judge's name is LeBeau, Lebou, I think. I have not appeared before the judge. I don't know his reputation. I don't know what his approach will be. So maybe you'll give him 30 days. I don't know. And we have had, I can tell you that my clerk, Mike Whitaker, did two things. He got a phone call from Ed Bennedy. And so Ed Bennedy wanted to know what was going on. So we explained a little bit to him. But he also talked to, I think I had him stop by here at the trailer park in the last couple weeks. And what's the fellow's name that's there? Mike? I can never remember his name.
Mike Scott.
Yeah. the fellow that lives there,
The tenant, yeah.
and he made some comment about how the steel prices are low, and that was one, kind of anecdotal explanation as to why it wasn't cleaned up. Well, that just kind of tells you he's running a junk salvage operation
Right.
there, right?
Right. In a
So,
residential
yeah.
trailer park.
So, be interesting to see what happens.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Yep.
Yeah. Next item on unfinished business is the website. Don, can you give us a summary of this?
Yeah, as I mentioned at the last board meeting, we had several people bidding on it. We got 3 qualified bids. After review and evaluation, we've picked Ed Web Services. They also happen to be the low-cost bidder, just coincidentally, but they were both low cost and what I thought was the best solution for us. They are a local company. The amount that they bid was within the amount that we had budgeted for the year to spend on this website refresh, so we don't have to worry about exceeding our budget. We're now given the contract to Don for review. He's reviewing it and assuming. I'm very confident that we will get the closure on this very quickly. I've had preliminary meetings with Tom Gath, who's the owner of EdWeb, and we're kind of getting it started, getting the project kind of spec'd out, make sure. But this basically gets us where we need to be, which is all of the information into a new website that is an industry standard kind of technology, so that if something happens to EdWeb, we're not stuck in the same situation where we're sued, where we would have to start over from scratch. We could just pick up somebody to maintain it. This will also have some tools in it so that Jane herself can post the minutes. Yeah, no. If she wanted to.
Thanks a lot.
If she wanted to.
And Sue Scott is cooperating with the transfer of this?
Yes.
Okay.
So she's provided us with all the information. Yes.
Any other questions for Don? Okay. Thanks, Don.
Just very
Yeah.
quickly, Jim, I did take a look at this, and just a couple, one nitpicky thing, as I mentioned before our meeting. On the agreement itself, it says EdWeb Services, hereinafter referred to as consultant. If it's a DBA, a doing business as, either there and or at the signature line, if it could say Tom Gath doing business as EdWeb Services, because a DBA, when you boil it right down, the contractor you're working with is actually the individual. Now, this may be an LLC or a corporation, and if it is, then our agreement would be with that entity. If it is a DBA and it kind of looks to me like it might be, because it doesn't have LLC or Inc. or Corp after it. Not a big deal. We all know who we're dealing with, but to have Tom sign DBA, so it'd be his signature. So it's not, it says like on the signature line, it says on behalf of the consultant. Well, and if legally he is the consultant, so it's probably a form contract he's come up with somewhere, but it would be he doing business as EdWeb Services. So not a big deal there, but just point that out. The other thing, I'm not a technical guy, so I'm not going to wade into that. I'll let Don handle that side. I think the most significant was that it does provide that either party may terminate this agreement by giving 30 days written notice. I think that's, if we didn't like something that's going on, we have the right to pull out. Obviously, we would owe for services rendered up to that point.
On the other hand, if he was unable to perform anymore, whatever reason,
that's right.
He can get out too.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's a double edged, and
but given the technology that we have, then 30 days would be ample time for us to find a replacement for him.
Right.
So without having to redevelop the site, as opposed to where we are today.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's, again, kind of the out on the county highway. It's a double edged sword, and I think
Good for both parties.
I don't think it's a bad thing. And the other thing is just to note that Um, I did check the procurement policy, and I do think because this is for technical services, I think it's an exception to the procurement policy, even though it sounds like Don has more than followed it, because if it's up to $2,500, we're supposed to get 2 written proposals, and he's gotten more than that. So, but just to point that out.
Okay. Thanks, Don.
So you could approve it, I guess. I mean, I don't know if you're ready to act on it now, but you could approve it, I guess.
Yeah, that would be a good thing. Don, I mean,
Well, sir, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize Jim to sign the contract pending kind of final approval by our council. To have Jim sign the contract pending our approval by our council.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Good. Okay. Next item, Don and I spent a few meetings with Jody Fish, and this has been a story that has gone nationwide with Preble. It was in the New York Post. It was in the San Antonio Star. It was in many other publications and websites around the country, and it created a lot of attention. So we think that this situation has been diffused. And Don, you spent the last meeting with Jody. Could you give us a summary of what has happened up to this point and where you think this is sitting right now?
Yeah. So I met Jeff Griswold and I met with Jody the day after the town board meeting, and kind of had an initial assessment, and then I agreed to help him get a replacement cell phone that was in the process and get it set up so that it would be appropriately formatted and initialized, so that it didn't have the appearance to him of being hacked, if you will. And so I went through several hours on the phone with his telephone provider, and we had 2 or 3 other meetings, and Jim was in a couple of the meetings, and we finally got his phone, got it set up over a couple of meetings, and through that, it became clear that some event had occurred. He had filed a police report, and he was angry because he felt that people weren't paying attention to him, and that his complaints weren't being taken seriously. So I did follow up, and I told him that I would. I followed up with the sheriff. I have to say that the sheriff has been very responsive and very knowledgeable about the situation. I also was approached by the state police to their intelligence group to understand the situation. They noticed that the flag was down, but they wanted to be apprised of the situation as it develops, and so I'm keeping them posted. And then I did talk with the fraud department at NBT Bank, which was the bank that Jody was using at the time, and spent an hour on the phone with them. They again, they were very responsive and within the constraints of their legal requirements. So in my conclusion out of this, or my impression, and I think Mark Helms and Mr. Griffin at NBT's conclusion is that in some fashion, Jody was scammed. Something happened to him, but there's not enough information or evidence to make it or to investigate further as a crime, as a criminal activity. So they felt that they had reached the conclusion of their investigations, and that was all they could do. Sheriff Helms has connected Jody with the Department of Social Services, trying to get him some guidance as to how to deal with some of the situations that he's in. I'm basically probably going to communicate with Jody once or twice more to try and kind of get him wrapped up and encouraged to utilize those social services to assist him. But I think, at this point, my recommendation to Jody is going to be, something did happen to you. Unfortunately, it can't be pursued. So you can either live in the past or time to move on and try and deal with your life going forward. So that's where we are. I'm hopeful that it stays in this situation at least
Mhm.
de-escalated. I think it still has the potential to be volatile, and so we need to just be aware of it.
Okay. Thanks, Don.
Mhm.
New business. We know that Linda Reelman has resigned from the board because she moved out of the town into a new house. And so she's no longer on the board. She was deputy supervisor. That means if I can't make it for some reason, she would carry on as supervisor. So we need to appoint a new deputy supervisor in place of Linda Reelman. So I would make a motion to appoint Don Fisher as new deputy supervisor. Need a second on
I'll
that.
second.
All in favor?
I,
Carried? Good. Congratulations, Don.
know
Big pay raise, huh?
Be a little something extra in your
Yeah.
you get an extra cookie in December.
Yeah. No promises on that. You gotta feed
Oh,
me and Dave,
man.
you gotta feed me and Dave to that 10.
You don't go that far away.
Set it on this side of the table.
From Northeast Transformers, we received $1,771.89. And from USPS, we received $741.92. And at this point, I would like to ask the public for comments. We're in a public comment period. If you have any comments to the town board of Preble or questions that we can hopefully answer for you, we will do so. So, anybody?
Yes, I'd like to response to the letter that I sent to you
Mm-hmm.
and to Renee. In
Mhm.
regard to my deposit, I get to hold the date. I never signed a contract or anything, which years past we signed a contract. It was never said in the contract that you had to clean up spotless.
You're talking about the town,
And-
the pavilion, right, at the
The
park?
pavilion.
Right.
And on top of that, she claims that the Catholic daughters put staples in the tables down there.
Mhm.
There's been staples in, and I went to a party down there afterwards, and there was staples in the table covered with green paint when they painted the tables. And there's another one that wasn't. And then there was one that was sticking out when I was down there. So she's blaming it on one organization when how does she know they put staples in it?
Mhm.
A lot of them bring tablecloths and put on.
Mhm.
And I was being kind
Mhm.
to two residents in this town. One whose husband was in the hospital, the other one, her husband was in and she was down seeing them, unable to make the deposit. So I made the deposit
Mhm.
to cover so that it happened. Then she turns around and I told her, she called me that night and she says, well, tell the Catholic daughters don't touch the ice cream in the refrigerator too that I left in there. And I said, don't worry, or they won't be touching the ice cream. Then I told her I would not be there that night. Doesn't she have common courtesy to call me and tell me that it took only 5 minutes to do all this stuff she claims it was there? I could have done it in 3 minutes,
Mhm.
but it doesn't cost $20.
Mhm.
That's what I'm pissed at. And the work that I've done for this damn recreation, when it was being built, we went down there. I took my kids down picking stones. On top of that, my parents' tractor come over in that field and helped dig it up and take the stones out and different things and other equipment. Then the people that have put their money in to working free, like I did, you're charging them because a little few crumbs are left in the sink. I've gone down there to parties and cleaned up. Furthermore, we used to have the key. If I'm running it, I'd have the key. I could unlock the building. I know no one was in there. How do you know that the Catholic daughters did that in the kitchen? There's no way, because the building was open when they got down there. How did they know? And then when they left, they locked the building. But years ago, they would unlock it and they'd take responsibility for anything. Now it's open until people get in there. That's what I'm complaining about.
Okay.
Just because one person thinks she owns the place.
Okay, so Jane and I talked about this situation this morning. And the situation basically is that everybody has to put up a $50 deposit in order to rent, to use the pavilion. And if it's damaged or messy, then we take money out of that. and this, now, we still have Betty Ann's check, right? We didn't cash that or anything, or deposit it.
No,
And then Renee has a voucher for how much? $20?
30.
$30. Okay. So none of that has been activated. It's just paperwork sitting there right now. Jane and I talked about it, and we came to a conclusion that Renee probably should have called Betty Ann. That she saw an issue there. There was staples in the table. There was some mess in the sink, and maybe for something that minor, she should have called Betty Ann and say, "Hey, we have an issue here. Can you, remedy this issue?" And go from there, instead of just docking somebody for $20. So, for the $20 out of the $50 that was paid. So Renee is not here to talk about it, but I think we should probably give Betty Ann back her check for $50 and make it known that Renee should be more in contact with the people who are using the pavilion. Anybody have any comments or addition to what I just said?
She was saying that there's a contract years ago. We don't use that anymore. Stating what, if it's dirty, staples, what they can and can't do down there.
Well, even if you had a contract, if there's
just something, something.
Yeah. We could create a contract for that, but if there's no money that's put up, even a contract.
Well, I mean, with the $50, okay, this is for $50. If the thing's dirty,
You're saying a contract plus the $50 deposit.
Yeah, and if it's dirty, we'll call you. If you can't clean it up, we're gonna keep it. We'll make a call, make an initiative to get them to come do something before we keep the check or anything like that.
Right.
Well, originally it wasn't for anything dirty in the sink. It was if anything was broken around the park.
Right. And I know I've done several with Babe and with the recreation department and everything else. And if I was not able to get the garbage down, I let Babe know. And she, she's good with it. She was good with it and said, get it as soon as you can. I got so-and-so coming in 2 days later. Just make sure it's taken care of. So
what happened to the contract? We always used to have a contract. The insurance company helped me write it years ago, which was approved. That in case there's damage, you're liable for the damage. The $50 is just a security deposit.
Right.
But it's not going to cover what. One time they were down there, a wedding reception, they pulled fixtures off the wall. So that's when the contract went in, because they had nothing signed that they're liable for.
Right.
Broken toilets, any of that stuff is
Right.
going to eat up the $50.
$50 is not gonna cover
It's not going to
repair.
cover that.
Right.
No.
You got their
Right.
signature, they're going to be liable for something.
Jane, do you think we have any copies of that contract in any of the files?
I probably have,
Okay.
but I can't put my hand on it right now.
No, not right now, but maybe over the month,
Yeah.
you could pull out a copy of that
Yeah.
contract. We could take a look at it, and we can incorporate that into the process. So we could have the contract if the contract worked before, it should work now, and we could run it by Don and just see if we need to update it a little bit, and we can incorporate that into the procedures for using the pavilion. And if there's damage, if there's significant damage, the $50 is certainly not going to cover a workman coming in and fixing anything, but replacing anything. So the contract would state that we could go after damages of the party. We could sue them in court if we have to. So that's where the contract would come in.
Yeah, and the importance of that might be as well getting people's signatures who are accepting that responsibility. Whereas if you just have kind of an informal gathering, well, it might make it easier if it ever got to that.
One person.
Yeah.
So if it's a family reunion, who's going to take the responsibility of signing their name on this contract?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Whoever booked it. You got a deposit.
Yeah, you got whoever puts the deposit up, whatever. Somebody's got to go and book it, like you said.
Right. Okay, we can work on that. And all of you agree that she should get a $50?
Yeah, a little nitpick in there, I think.
Yeah. So, a wrinkle in the procedure, happened, and we need to iron this out. So, Betty Ann, you're getting a $50 check back, and we're going to look into doing that contract. Okay.
I think it's just the principle, the whole thing.
Oh yeah, there's principle in it. There's no doubt. Yeah. So, anybody else comment or question or anything? Okay. We need a motion to pay the general fund vouchers.
Make a motion to pay general fund vouchers abstract number 9, numbers 230 to 250, totaling $6,704.33.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Need a motion to pay the highway fund vouchers.
I'll make a motion to pay the highway fund vouchers abstract number 9, numbers 71 to 78, totaling $12,220.09.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried. Need a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried.